for the 2025 BT Young Scientists and Technologists of the Year. Sisters, Ciara Murphy, Laoise Murphy, Saoirse Murphy.
My name is Ciara, I'm 17, I'm in 5th year in school and I'm the oldest sister, I think is my role in the project.
I'm Saoirse, I'm 15, I'm in 3rd year and I think my role was primarily research.
My name is Laoise, I am 12 and I'm in 1st year, and my role was mostly the secondary features and the front end of the app, so at the end user would see.
I'm Colm Hart, I'm the head of delivery in Europe for Nearform. We build bespoke software solutions for clients across the world. We also do a lot of work with the Irish government, including the HSE, which is how I got introduced to Ciara, Saoirse and Laoise.
ACT, which stands for Aid Care Treat, is the app that we developed for the BT Young Scientist both in 2024 and then further developed it for the exhibition this year. And ACT is a medical emergency response application which is essentially designed to support the emergency response process. So ACT has 2 key features, which are the provision of geolocation information, so that's the end user's longitude and latitude coordinates, which is accurate to 7 decimal places, and also the transmission of personal and medical information directly to the emergency services in the event of a medical emergency instantaneously. And then, as well as those 2 key features, there's a myriad of additional features which include instructional guides, patient assessment aids, CPR ABC guides, and all of that information and all of those features are provided directly to the end user so that they can assist the bystander can assist the patient whilst awaiting the emergency services, the professionals to arrive to the scene. Regarding the technology behind it, we coded and created the front end of the app using an app development software, and then as well as that we worked with Nearform then to actually test to ensure that the information that we were transmitting was secure and encrypted, and also that essentially to ensure that it worked, so that the information that is sent from ACT can be received by an external system. So that was kind of testing the back-end system that we developed. We were first introduced to Colm back in March, I think it was, at this stage, which was a long time ago, nearly a year ago at this stage. As he mentioned, through the HSEs, the stakeholders that we engaged with. And back then the app looked very different to what it looks like now. But we wanted to focus on, when working with him, we wanted to focus on ensuring that the transmission of the information from the app to the external systems, so that we wanted to ensure that was successful. And some of the advice that he gave us around that was regarding the API. Specifically, when we were testing it, there was a few long calls where we had to work through some barriers that we encountered along the way. But I think it was primarily the advice you gave was primarily regarding how all of the technological side of these health apps actually work. That was the first call, was focusing on some of the previous HSE projects, and then how then we looked at that and tried to tailor ACT to ensure that it could, was at a similar standard to those pre-existing apps.
Yeah, so I suppose we've built a couple of key projects with the HSE. One of the first ones we built was the COVID tracker app back in 2020. Again, this was a mobile app that was going to be rolled out to the wider public to deal with the pandemic at the time. So quite a critical app from a HSE perspective. And some of the key attributes of that would be the effectiveness of the app, the usability of the app, the friendliness of the app. All these were key components in terms of how we would develop it, and key considerations we had to take into account as we built that app. More recently now, we've also been working with the National Ambulance Service on their Community First Responder app. That one's still currently in development. It was actually the National Ambulance Service that connected us with the girls. But again, the app they're building there, it's very much about coming at the needs of the user understanding what it is the user will need to achieve, and then building an app that will really effectively support those requirements. So it's all about making sure that what we're building is driving the right impact, and that's much more critical in terms of what we focus on, as opposed to just a pure technical focus when you engage in these type of projects.
So what we've developed is so when the end user goes onto the app, we've designed the app to have calming colors, like it's a teal type color. That is, so in the event of an emergency, that is not. It's kind of calming for them, so they don't feel like it's calm them down. So it's not too rushed. It's not too panicked. But all that was a very important part, a small part for the developing, but it is still key to the app to make sure that we can make sure that the person can be as calm as possible, so they don't have to feel as rushed and panicked as they would be in if there was like a vibrant red or colours like that.
So the inspiration stemmed from a medical emergency within our family. A relative of ours collapsed after completing a 200-kilometre marathon in 2022. And despite being surrounded by 6 of us, we weren't aware of how to effectively respond. We weren't adequately prepared with the tools or knowledge. So this highlighted how panic, unpreparedness, and ineffective response can have can have tragic consequences in more critical situations. So acknowledging the majority of people are likely to either encounter or experience a medical emergency at least once in their lifetime, we originally set out to develop an app that would aid, care and treat bystanders in the event of... bystander would be allowed to aid, care and treat a patient in the event of a medical emergency.
I think primarily the biggest challenge we faced was with regards to the actual development of the app. That was something, app development wasn't something that we had experienced before. We had minimal coding experience prior to the development of ACT. So it was a very new experience for all of us. It was quite a steep learning curve at times, and Colin would know that from our encounters. And, there was an awful lot of trial and error involved in it, but we pushed through because we knew that there would be a rewarding outcome if we did. And thankfully there was, evidently, but the reason that we persevered through those challenges that we encountered was to ensure that ACT was at the highest standard that it could be for the stakeholders and users. And I think all along we always wanted to develop and design an interface, as Colin was saying, that is very much user-centric and simplistic for the user to be interacting with, especially in high stress and high panic scenarios such as emergencies. So we always had the user in mind whilst we were developing the app, so that it could be used by anyone of any age or technological proficiency. So I think, despite the challenges, looking back now, I think it all was worthwhile. So we were delighted with that anyway.
Yes, we will continue to develop ACT, and we will continue the rollout process with the stakeholders. And also we have the 2 international competitions. We're going to Latvia in September to represent Ireland in the UCs, and then we also have Japan in July, which is the expo, which we can't wait for. It's going to be an amazing experience.
Yeah, I suppose they're kind of the 3 key areas, right? It is that sort of privacy, security and usability. Obviously, privacy and security are paramount when it's health-related information, because potentially you're accessing very sensitive data on each individual. The individual themselves wants to be assured that this information is properly protected, is properly managed, it's securely accessed, and they're in no way kind of at risk of exposing their data to people that shouldn't have access to it. So from that perspective, I mean, some of the things we always look at is what information are we actually capturing from end users, and where is it going to be held, and when is it going to be shared out to a wider audience? And sort of minimizing those points helps to maximize the privacy impact. And then from a security perspective, there's lots of just best industry standards out there that we would follow to make sure that as we capture information, transmit information, process information, it's all done in a secure manner as possible to minimize any leakage of data elsewhere. And then the usability we've kind of touched on, again, that has to be a core focus of the app itself. Again, it's going to be users that are interacting with the app. They're not necessarily technically savvy users, so you want to make it as clear and simple and as intuitive as possible for people to interact with these apps and understand how to use them, but also understand the value that they bring. I mean, when I first spoke to them back in March last year, I mean, what really impressed me at the time was they had a very clear understanding of what it was they were trying to achieve, a very clear vision. They had thought this through in detail. So it wasn't just that they kind of had a bit of an idea. I mean, a lot of thought had clearly gone into this. They were able to articulate it very clearly, and they knew what they were trying to achieve from a technical perspective. Back in March, I mean, they were probably early on in their technical journey, I would say. So they built a sort of web page that allowed them to capture some information. But they had a long way to go before that would really kind of be realized as a full app. And then as I got to the end of last year and we had some more conversations, I mean, they had made huge progress from a technical perspective. So they had abandoned the web and had gone all in on building a proper native mobile application. They were using Flutter Flow. They had built UIs. They had built kind of workflows and actions within the app itself. So they'd obviously put a huge amount of time and effort into this to figure out how all these things work, how best to leverage them, and how to make them effective for what they were trying to do. So I think that journey for me was very impressive, and how far they've been able to take their learnings over the course of the 9 months.
Well, it was quite a long journey looking back on it now. Myself and Saoirse, we first came up with the idea for ACT after Saoirse explained experiencing our own medical emergency within our family in September of 2022. So that was originally when the idea came about. And then myself and Saoirse entered the BT Young Scientist in 2024. And we had worked on the development, as Colm mentioned, regarding the actual technical development. We had delivered a prototype that had a very basic functionality, but it still delivered the vision of what we wanted ACT to look like. And then we were recognised as the overall group runners-up at the competition, and that very much encouraged us to continue the development of it. It allowed us to access a much wider variety of stakeholders. So we engaged with more senior personnel within the HSE, more personnel in the National Ambulance Service on Garda Síochána, and then we were introduced to Colm. And then for the past year, since the Young Scientist in 2024, we had a particular focus on the development of the app itself. So we wanted to ensure that the front end of the app was working in time for the exhibition, but we also wanted to ensure that the information could be transmitted from the app directly to the external system, so the emergency services CAD system, and that was why we interacted with Nearform then. But in terms of what we actually achieved technically, we developed the API that can transmit the information from the app to the external system. We successfully completed the front end, but that, I think, especially with the back end, we encountered a number of challenges pertaining to how the information could actually be transmitted. We went through many different processes for that. We firstly considered SMS messaging, and then we moved through a few different other methods, and we eventually landed on the API method, and we deemed that as the most successful one. So that's why we decided to go with that. So then we presented the project at the Young Scientist again this year, and I think the one thing that I especially like about the Young Scientist is that it's very much a constant learning journey. And even at the Young Scientist and in the RDS, from listening and getting advice from the judges and at the Young Scientist last year, getting advice from judges and people, relevant personnel, was very much key in ensuring that the app that we were creating was tailored to the needs of the users, the potential users, as well as the emergency services. And that was something we focused on a lot throughout the journey of developing the app. And I think we always had the user in mind when we were developing the app, but as well as that, the reason we engaged so much with the stakeholders in the emergency services is because essentially the app is for them to be utilising, and that is the plan for the future. So that's why we engaged with them so much throughout the process as well. Not at all. I don't think we didn't, definitely, compared to the learnings and understandings that we have of software and the whole world of emergency medicine and software development that we've been exposed to now in the last year. It's been so beneficial in that sense, because it's opened our eyes to an awful lot of potential careers, and I think it's great to have the exposure and interest, especially at our ages, like Laoise being only 12 and Saoirse 15. It's great to have that insight into the world and what's involved in those sort of aspects and those fields. So it's definitely been a learning curve, but 100% it's been so beneficial for us for the future. And then I think it was especially eye-opening because through our interactions with stakeholders and, visiting 999 call centres and engaging with such senior personnel, such as Colm, we've learned so much, and particularly about Nearform. I think one thing that we learned a lot was the importance of modern technology in making an impact in, social ventures especially. And I think the key aspect of ACT is the importance of modern technology in the field of emergency medicine, so in social settings. And that is something that we tried to, I think, through ACT, the improvement and involvement of the emergency response process is, we aimed to ensure that we aim to improve the process that's already in place, and modernize the traditional system that's already there. So that was, and I think through then learning about Nearform, we were talking recently about the role of digital technologies in making a positive social impact. And I think it's so crucial for us to recognise at this stage of the app development process about how important the harnessing of digital technologies for making a positive social impact is, and especially in the initiative that we undertook, the development of ACT, which is primarily to improve those processes that are traditionally in place. And we've realised over the last 2 years, how important products and services like ACT are in making such a huge difference to society and to existing solutions that are already in place, and just in general making a difference in how effectively and efficiently the emergency services can, how products and services like ACT can make such a huge difference in how effectively and efficiently the emergency services can reach people in times of crises. So it's been very, very crucial in that aspect, and we learned that, Saoirse, especially through the research we undertook whilst developing the app, and then obviously speaking to stakeholders, and then especially through speaking with Colm, we learned a lot about the work that Nearform do and how beneficial the work that Nearform does and how important it is for the social aspects.
Yeah, so I think we kind of acknowledged our strengths and our weaknesses, and we kind of targeted our roles in accordance with those. I think in terms of like how we split them, we just kind of decided a list of things that we needed to do in order to allow ACT to reach its full potential and allow us to reach our goals. And so with those, we acknowledge our strengths and we each divided up the tasks. So I think that worked.
Yeah, well, it was difficult at times, especially I think Saoirse being in an exam year with the junior cycle mocks now in the middle of them. It was difficult at times. It was probably easier last year when she was in second year and I was in transition year because we had more time to work on the development of the app. But, it was difficult at times, but I think we were most delighted with the result because I think it reflected the work that we had put into it and the amount of hours that we had put into it, and I think that was honestly the most rewarding aspect of the whole journey. Then I was just going to say I think that the work that Nearform does is so important, and we were so delighted that we got the opportunity to work with Cullum and to have the experience that we did with him in the whole process. It has been so beneficial for ACT in ensuring that it can reach real world needs and ensures that it executes the real world needs that we had hoped it would, and also for us because it's been such a fantastic journey. Going from, I think, looking back in retrospect now at how far we've come since we first spoke, I think it's nice on both levels. So we're absolutely so delighted and I think so privileged as well to get to work with such experienced personnel as well.
Just like to add more, I mean, again, huge congratulations to the three girls. Like, it's an amazing achievement what you've done. The amount of effort, I suppose patience and dedication you've actually put into this over the last 1 to 2 years, it's incredible, and it's really amazing to see the success you've managed to achieve with this whole project.